Hello and welcome to this video about Unit 2, Lesson 1 of Level 3 Digital Media Extended Course. So this is the first lesson in a series that looks at the pre-production stage of media products. So as you will know from previous units, there are three main stages of production. There's pre-production, which is the planning stage, where you will, regardless of what type of form of media it is, whether it's a TV show, a video game, a film, a newspaper, a magazine, a website, you're going to need to do preparation and planning for it. So this scheme of lessons will look at the different types of documents you need. It will look at the different legal aspects and financial aspects you need to consider, among many other things. And pre-production, remember, we're not just looking at just one type of media. As I said, it can be things like websites, magazines, newspapers, whatever. That each type of media has a different type of document that you need to consider. So we'll look at all of that in later lessons. But for now, let's start with this do now. So you can pause the video and answer these questions. I'll read them out. What does it mean to plan something? Why is it important to plan a media product? What factors might you need to consider when planning a media production? And what are some examples of media products? So pause the video and answer these questions. Also have a look at the learning objective to identify the paperwork required for planning a media product. So pause the video and then when you're done, we can continue. So when developing a media product, there's a wide array of factors that need to be considered. These factors can affect the production of a media product in a number of stages of the development process. This unit looks at how these factors need to be considered during the planning phase and their impact upon this stage of production. So I'll just recap again the three different stages of production. So this is relevant to all different types of media products. So for example, film, if you're making a film, in the pre-production stage, you'll be writing the script, you'll be hiring the staff, the crew members, you'll be hiring the actors, you'll be storyboarding, you will be making edits to the script, you'll be sourcing filming locations, you will be sorting out all the legal aspects of it, like you'll get the actor release form to ensure that you have their permission to use their likeness in your film, etc. That will be all in pre-production. Getting funding for your film. Then the production will actually be filming it. So once you've planned all of that, you can then film it. Also in pre-production, you'll do risk assessments, you'll do recce's, you're gonna want to make sure you've looked at all the risks and safety precautions that need to be handled so that you have contingencies and you're prepared for if anything goes wrong. All of these kind of things need to be considered at the beginning before you even start filming, to avoid any problems. You'll also do things like a production schedule to just plan out everything in advance, so you utilize your time to the best of your ability without wasting any of it. But I will talk about all of that in a lot more detail later on. Then, as I said, the production would be filming it, and then pre-production will be editing your shots, adding music, adding sound effects, Foley sounds, re-recording any dialogue that you didn't get right the first time. Maybe it was muffled, maybe there was too much background noise. You may call in your actors to do some ADR, which you should remember from Unit 16 if you're doing Unit 16 in your schools. So we don't need to worry about the production stage or the post-production stage in this unit. You're just focusing on the planning, the pre-production stage. So types, that should say, of media production and its implications for the process. The digital media sector contains a wide variety of areas from film and TV to social media and advertising. The products and services created in these areas also vary in their purpose. It could include anything from entertainment, education, information, and promotion. Okay, so just breaking down what some of these words mean. Entertainment, it may seem like common sense, but it's still important to be able to define these kinds of terms. So entertainment is gaining the attention of an audience so that they can relax or enjoy the activity. Entertainment can come in many different forms. It can be to offer escapism. For example, through video games, you want your audience to feel transported and immersed in the world of your video game, whether it's something like Mario Kart or GTA. You want to take them away from the real world and transport them into your video game. It may be you want to make them laugh through comedy. You may want to scare them through horror films. There's many different types of entertainment. Information, so providing facts about a topic or answering a question. This can be factual information, maybe through a podcast, through a blog, could be through a documentary, could be through a news article. Then promotion is obviously raising awareness about a product or a service, and then the ultimate goal of that is to make money. So now we're going to look at specific elements of the planning and pre-production process that you need to consider so that you're prepared. So financial constraints. A major constraint on the production of a media product are the budgetary factors that are placed on the product. A product must be financially viable if it's going to be successful. Therefore, a budget must be set during the planning stage of the production. So you can pause the video here. What might you need to budget for when planning a media production? Pause the video and maybe do a mind map or a list or bullet points, some ideas, and then we'll continue. So, things that you need to budget for can include things like staffing. So, for example, director, animator, graphic designer, journalist. You need to think about the cost of filming at specific locations. It's not always going to be free. You might need to hire a studio. You might need to pay in order to film at maybe like a shop or film in a restaurant or a cafe. They may allow you to film there if you pay. You need to consider legal costs. You need to get insurance, things like that. You might need to pay to use specific music in your film or in your production. Transport, if you're doing a film. How are you transporting your cast and your crew and your equipment from one location to another? May even be one country to another. And the resources that you're going to need. So that includes equipment like camera, computers, lights, mics, props, and even software. So in order to be able to afford all of the things you need for the production, you need to have revenue. You need to have money to fund all of these things. So there are many different ways you can raise the money for this. So before I tell you some ways, you can pause the video and maybe jot down some ideas that you think that you may be able to raise money for a production. Okay, so first of all, what is a revenue stream? It's a method of raising money for a project. So during the production of a media product, there are a variety of revenue streams that can be accessed to finance the project, including sponsorship, crowdfunding, corporate finance, advertising, and corporate finance. So franchising is when intellectual property of the original product is licensed to other partners for commercial use, e.g. merchandising. So for example, if you're releasing a film, you may make an animated film, you may make a deal with McDonald's to have a tie-in so that toys made in the likeness of the characters in your film are exclusively licensed to McDonald's so they can make toys. So that will you can get a portion of the funds that are raised through the revenue generated from that. Corporate finance is when money is raised by investments from businesses. Crowdfunding, money is raised by asking for donations from fans and supporters, can be through social media like Kickstarter. If you were recently, I saw on Twitter, or X as it's known now, someone wanted to create an animated series. So they did like a version of like a not as high quality version, but just a brief idea of what they wanted it to look like. They told the audience who the type of actors that they want in it. They gave like a little scene from what they hoped to be their series, and then they dropped the link for the crowdfunding website so people can donate in order for it to become a reality. Advertising, so brands can pay to be promoted in the production. For example, product placement, so films like Avengers and stuff, you'll often see cars like BMW featured in the film. BMW paid so that their cars could be featured prominently in that film. So whenever it could be drink companies like Coca-Cola, the character may be drinking Coca-Cola, and it's specifically shown to the camera that it's in an unsubtle way that the character is drinking Coke. That is a form of funding. So they secured those deals prior to making the film in order to help fund it. Or if they're using like an iPhone or Apple products, that's another method that they can use to raise money. Finally, sponsorship is when a brand pays to be associated with the final media production. So you guys may be too young, but back in the day when you'd watch TV soap operas like on channels like ITV, like Emmerdale or Coronation Street, sometimes it would say this program is sponsored by, and then they'd say like maybe a soap or like cleaning soap or something like that, or a crisp, like, or if it's a food show like Come Dine With Me, sometimes it's sponsored by a food brand like a pasta sauce or something, Dolmio. These are some ways to finance your product so that you can afford to make it. So we look at financial constraints. Now we're going to look at time constraints. So time constraints can come in many forms and are one of the most important aspects to keep in mind when planning a media product. Productions have deadlines that are often related to its final publication. Speaking of deadlines, in a future lesson, we're going to look at ways you can plan and structure your tasks, like documents you can use to ensure that you stick to the deadline. Failure to meet this deadline can result in the project failing and financial loss for the companies involved. When planning the creation of a media production, timescales are often built backwards from the deadline. The various phases of the production are then built in to planning to meet this deadline. So that is what you need to consider for time constraints. You also need to consider what kinds of people you're going to need to help you to create your production. These people, the staff members with specific skills, are called personnel. It's important to hire staff with the right skills and experience. These should be considered in the pre-production stage. An audit of the requirements for the production is carried out and their skills are matched against the different tasks that will be required. So by carrying out this process, any gaps in knowledge and experience can be identified well in advance and steps taken to fill these. This process also allows the correct number of personnel to be identified so that a production can progress smoothly. Delays due to not having enough staff can impact on a project meeting its deadline and increase costs, with other resources not being used to their full extent. So overall, it's important to be mindful of who you're hiring, what tasks they're going to need to do, so that when it comes to making it, you're well suited to the tasks that you need.